Bing, boom, dan, doom, boom. You like, bitch, shut up. I know, I'm an idiot. Hey, how are you? Is everybody good? I hope everybody's good. You know, we getting through it over here. That's all I can say. That's all I got. So this is a solo episode, y'all. I'm here by my lonesome. I know you all are used to guests, and it's been snowing. It's been cold. I've been trying desperately to not harass people about these episodes and getting here. And yeah, I'm not even gonna do that. So I decided it's done. It's cold. It's blizzard. It's a fucking blizzard. I'm just going to go ahead and crank this episode out. So we are on season 4, episode 3. Is it 3? Lies. 4. Episode 4 of I Swear to Drunk I'm Not God. And I'm Britt. Hi. How are you all? For this episode, it's brought to you by no one. It's not. I don't have ads. Who are we diving into today? We're diving into Mr. Andrew Cunanan, okay? A lot of us old heads know who this is. A lot of us remember. This man was very, very interesting to explore. Like the idea of being so young when he died and having all of this happen in such a short period of time. I mean, it's impressive. It's sad, but it's also incredibly impressive. So, we're going to talk about him. He was charming when he wanted to be. He was calculating when he needed to be. And he was constantly reinventing himself. I mean, this man was pure chaos. So we're going to break down the lies, the social climbing, the delusions, and the performance art that is Andrew. All the raw ingredients. We're going to talk about that. For this episode, I read Vulgar Favors, Andrew Cunanan, Gianni Versace, and the Largest Failed Manhunt in U.S. History by Maureen Orth, and pulled from FBI records, which, obviously were released after the madness. The poison on this episode is called The Red Carpet. I don't like it. Believe it or not, I'm actually drinking. I'm drinking the cocktail. I don't like it. It tastes like NyQuil. I do 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Just go make you a cranberry vodka and be happy. Like, I got 2 drinks sitting here with ice and I'm like regretting it because I'm like, wow, this really does suck. It's a Campari. I like Campari, but not like when I'm drinking a Negroni, I like it, but it's the only thing for real that I really like Campari in, even though I feel like, what is it called? The Italian Aperol Spritz. No, that's Amaro Nonino. I think that has Campari in it, but whatever. Doesn't matter. I don't like this one. That's what's important. It's 1.5 ounce vodka, 1 ounce Campari, 1 ounce pomegranate liqueur, and a 1/2 ounce of simple syrup. And you shake all of that in a cocktail shaker and you strain into a chilled cocktail glass and you garnish with lime if that's what you want to do. You know how I am about garnish. Like, don't waste the vegetables and the fruit and shit like that if you can avoid it, because it's real out here. Like, if it's not adding any flavor to your drink, don't add it. Now with these grocery prices, no sirree. All right, I have nothing else to update you on. It wasn't that long ago when I did an episode, but like I said, I don't have a guest on this one, so we're just gonna bust it. Wow. Okay. I need to relax. We just gonna do it. We just gonna make it happen. Okay. So we're going to start from the beginning. Sip. I'm hoping my dog falls asleep soon because I tried to like wear her out before I started. But the score. If she starts misbehaving like she's about to do right now, then just ignore it. What's wrong, pushy cat? What's wrong? It's okay. And my mom's not here to kind of babysit, so whatever. All right. Andrew Philip Cunanan was born August 31st, 1969 in National City, California, to Modesto Pete Dungao Cunanan and Mary Ann Shalaki. He was the youngest of four, one older brother, two older siblings. I'm not going to linger on the siblings because they don't play a big part in the case, but just know Andrew was the baby and he was treated like it. So Mary Ann was Italian American with Sicilian roots. And according to her father had mob connections, which who knows? She called herself a menopause baby because she was born late in life and blamed that for why she was a bit dark. And when I say dark, I mean deeply anxious, unstable, and later struggling with what appears to be serious untreated mental illness. So that's what I mean by dark. In 1961, she meets Pete in a Long Beach sailors bar where she was waitressing. Pete is 11 years older than her. He's from a village near Baluag, I think that's how you pronounce it, in the Philippines, and a career Navyman. He got a 2-inch nail on his pinky finger, which, I'm sorry, that is always going to be a choice. It's just true. I don't know if that nail was for coke, for pimping, or if it was just pure aesthetic, but it was doing something. I got the feeling it was for a purpose. But when Mary Ann was 6 months pregnant, they got married. Their first son was born in 1961. Pete gets transferred to a naval hospital back east. And by 1963, they have a daughter. In 1966, they moved to Rhode Island, and when Vietnam escalated, Pete joined the first hospital company to help tend to the wounded. While he's away, Mary Ann is alone with the two kids and a husband who's already suspicious. I mean, Pete becomes convinced she's cheating and insists that their daughter isn't his. He said he never abused her, but she later said that he did hit her and pull her hair, which that is kind of abuse if she's telling the truth. With that mindset, though, and his ego, Pete feels entitled to do whatever he wants. Money was tight, and Mary Ann definitely knew how to spend it. She started weaponizing sex to get what she wanted. Pete would brag later, quote, "I had 3 bank accounts, but only one with my home address." Translation: lots of secrets, lots of control. He also had a very lavish lifestyle for a man with a limited paycheck. And instead of slowing down on kids when the budget was tight, they kept going. Now, in 1967, they had another daughter, and by 1969, Pete was at the Naval Hospital in San Diego. That's when Andrew is born. After Andrew's birth, Mary Ann has what sounds like severe postpartum breakdown and is hospitalized for about 3 months. He takes care of the baby in her absence, and that creates this like weird bond between them. I wouldn't call it weird. I mean, he's the father, but Andrew becomes the favorite. The older kids are treated like street kids. The younger two, Gina and Andrew, are pampered and protected. Basically, the older kids got the strict, broke, stressed version of their parents, and Andrew got the curated one. Pete eventually retires from the Navy and reinvents himself as a finance guy. He enrolls in business school, he gets his bachelor's and then a master's in the mid-1970s. He's obsessed with the come up. His mantra is basically, wherever there are rich people, that's where you'll find me. By 1979, Pete's in a training program to become a stockbroker. And for a minute, it works. They get a 3-bedroom house in Bonita. They drive nicer cars, and Andrew gets whatever he wants to keep up with the rich kids. Bonita is comfortable, okay? And, you know, the Cunanans are trying to project we belong here energy, even if the math isn't mathing. Mary Ann is devoutly Catholic and clearly struggling with her mental health. I mean, neighbors see her as eccentric. She blurts out whatever's in her head. She swings between needy and intense and spends a lot of time with Andrew. They watch TV, they read magazines, they watch old movies. She dotes on him. And over time, it becomes smothering. Pete hates it and feels like she suffocates him. But he's also feeding Andrew's ego, the golden child who can't do anything wrong. Then the money game starts to crack. After only about 13 months as a stockbroker, Pete is terminated for non-compliance. He's ignoring rules, pushing risky deals, and acting like regulations are for other people. Okay. Andrew, meanwhile, is the little prince. He's wearing designer clothes. He's also dressing way preppy for a kid his age. He's loving every second of the attention. He's loud. He's flamboyant. He has that same bravado his father has. Now, he starts high school, an early high school in Bonita Vista. He starts junior high. She only do that inward sneezing shit when I'm on an episode. And now she looking at me. I know what the fuck this is. This is setup. This is manipulation. Now, I'm telling you, she a Gemini, okay? Now, he starts junior high and early high school in the Bonita Vista system and is placed in the gifted program. Now, he allegedly tests with a 147 IQ in the third grade. He's voted best dressed. He's already leaning into elitism and snobbery, and he lies a lot. He tells people he owns stock in Wrigley Gum and Coca-Cola. He doesn't. His father, never made more than $50,000 a year. And the lifestyle Andrew brags about, middle class at best. His classmates mostly clock it as performance. They don't believe him. They just think it's entertainment. Now, Andrew's fine, right? He's fine dining. He's dramatic. He once went to a costume party as the Prince of Wales because he was already a prince in his own head. Another time when a friend's dad said that she couldn't go to lunch with him, Andrew had his mom drop off a seafood dinner from a restaurant. At a friend's 12th birthday, he was mad there was no Perrier. So yeah, the values were skewed early. Now, he learns very young that he's special, that rules don't apply to him, and that his job is to be bigger, louder, and more fabulous than everyone else. After hustling applications to multiple private schools, Andrew gets into drama. Andrew gets into the Bishop's School, which is an ultra elite prep school in La Jolla, basically San Diego's Beverly Hills, which I like La Jolla. I do. Back then, tuition was a few $1,000s. Now it's about $40,000 to $50,000. Now, Bishop's is where Andrew really becomes Andrew. He's surrounded by kids with money, real money, trust funds, tennis coaches, ski trips, homes in multiple zip codes. He hides his background. He hides his family. He starts fully pretending to be someone else. And he's hyper focused on image and acutely aware that his parents can't actually support the lifestyle that he wants. His classmates get the vibe. He's fucking lying. It is what it is. But again, he's entertaining. And they let him rock. Shit. They look, you do you, we gonna do us. It is what it is. Now, the twist at Bishop's is that a lot of the rich kids like to downplay being rich, which is a concept that fascinates me. Because these kids think it's cooler to act broke. And it's not just these kids, but this is a thing amongst some rich youth, that being broke actually has substance, right? I think the idea of not working for what you have makes you feel like your character hasn't been built up to a point. You know what I mean? And on the flip side, people who grew up in the hood are just like, damn, I wish my parents were rich. You know what I mean? But rich people and their rich children have this concept that people who struggle have more character. And to a certain extent they do. Having to work for something makes it feel more velvety. I'm missing words right now. Makes it feel more like something. And so, meanwhile, Andrew is broke. You know what I mean? He don't like that shit at all. He wants the full fantasy. He wants the balls. He wants the fine dining. He wants the expensive house parties. He wants the expensive cars, the clothes, the homes. He wants all of that. He's like, what the fuck? Y'all got money. Why are you pretending to be poor? Because I'm actually poor, and that's not what you want. And on the flip side, people who are broke like to act like they have money. I spent a great deal of my life doing that because, you know, this whole concept of like fake it till you make it, you have to be in the rooms where things are happening and where people that make moves are. There's no point in just sitting around a bunch of broke people if you can help it. Like that, it sounds fucked up, but like, I'm not just going to shop at the mall. I'm shopping on Michigan Avenue. That was how I was as a teenager too. So a part of me kind of understood that. Now, mind you, my family was probably Inglewood middle class, and to a white person, that's poor. And so I did have things, and, you know, I had great Christmases and we went on vacations and things like that, even though my mom couldn't afford it. But my family was always about exposing us to experiences. And I think had they not done that, I wouldn't be in the position that I am right now to explore the things that I have explored and to be interested and excited about things that people who did not have people around them to expose them to those things would be excited about. They don't. It's such a privilege to be cultured, right? And to know the alcohol and the restaurant and the designers and the models of cars and the thing, you know what I mean? To know all of that makes you feel more robust, more three-dimensional, more well-rounded. And so as a youth, I would kind of like try to dive myself into things. And obviously I wasn't crazy with it. Like I wasn't going to ask my mama for shit, that she couldn't afford. And she also wasn't going to do anything too crazy that she couldn't afford. But I do understand that, like I do understand wanting to be in certain rooms and around people, because to be honest, it's an opportunistic environment. You just want to, you want a friend whose dad got a boat, because that's your opportunity to get on a boat. You want a homegirl whose parents got a summer home, because that's your opportunity to go to a summer home. Not to mention, you go to their summer home, you get on their boat, you're going to meet all types of people, a suitor, new friends, fuck around, end up with a job. You know what I mean? Like, it starts to feel like the possibilities are endless. And so I understand the concept here. I even understand the concept of Pete, but you can't do it to your detriment. And that's where we all fuck up. That's what my family fucked up. That's where probably a lot of us continue to fuck up, is that we overextend what's necessary to appear successful. And it could be problematic. Your bank account ain't reflecting that. You trying to go on these wild, crazy trips to spend all this money and, buy $1,000 bottles of champagne. $1,000 is all you got in your account. It's not good. So, Andrew pretty much installs himself in other people's families. Like, he befriends a girl named Rachel Rifat. I hope I'm saying her name right. And basically he becomes part of her household. He learns that if you behave like you belong, some people just won't even question it, And so really he was using wealth as more of like an invisibility, not even a visibility cloak, but more like a mask. You know what I mean? Like, I know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. And that's all that matters. Now, Rachel's mom, Ann, noticed something very interesting. Andrew treats his mother like his child, and he seems embarrassed by her. Like, she's too ethnic. She's too chaotic. She's too honest about being working class. He's chasing whiteness. He's chasing wealth. And Pete, helps this along by driving Andrew and Rachel around in a Lincoln Town car. So the father is kind of like pumping oxygen into that and giving Andrew a credit card that he basically can't afford. And when Andrew doesn't get to go to the opera to go see Carmen with his class because he's sick, Pete buys him a Nissan 300ZX Turbo. Oh, by the way, Andrew's 14. Andrew can't even legally drive, but now he has a sports car. And just real quick, I'm 90% sure Pete bought this for himself. But Pete brags that it was the first one in San Diego. The family, meanwhile, is like mortgaging their future to keep up this fucking show. And this is also the period where Andrew's narcissism and fantasy life really takes shape. He tells elaborate tales about being for money, about owning multiple houses, about his father being powerful and connected. He starts bringing a gun to school. His father was apparently into shooting and would shoot at the home. And so, he was kind of into it. But he was telling people that his father was in the Filipino mob. He wasn't, at least not from what I read. He's also figuring out that he's gay at this time. Like, he tells Rachel, who doesn't believe him at first, she says, when she asks how it feels kissing girls, this is what she asked Andrew. He says, the same as if you were kissing a girl. It feels awful. Which I'm like, I'm picking up what you're putting down. That's actually a really interesting way of putting that, but it's true. So he leans into a flaming personality, right? Like, I'm a flaming homosexual, because it gives him attention and it gives him edge. Like, he's obsessed with designer labels, expensive cars, 1920s, 30s France. He's wanted to be decadent, untouchable, tragic, At home, it's a mess. The house is unstable. The marriage is basically dead and the finances are crumbling. But Mary Ann relies on Andrew emotionally. He becomes her confidant, her caretaker in ways no teenager actually should be. I mean, Pete is blowing through money like he's Uncle Moneybags. The family mortgages the Bonita house and moves to a smaller townhouse in Rancho Bernardo, which is a more conservative, kind of like retirement adjacent area. And Andrew tells his friends they have multiple homes, but in reality, the townhouse is barely furnished. He gets the master bedroom, which, yes, you heard that. Andrew gets the master bedroom. Mary Ann sleeps in the maid's room, and Pete ends up on the couch. We just gonna leave that where it is. She about to bark. No. Okay. So the parents, really, Mary Ann and Pete are done with each other, but Andrew is kind of the glue. He literally tells people his siblings are jealous of him because he gets everything. In his later bishop years, Andrew gets into the party crowd. We're talking weed, ecstasy, mushrooms, probably coke. He's talking that live fast, die young at 16 talk. He loves the idea, too, of being a kept man, of being taken care of by a rich man, about living a luxury life without working. And on paper, he's smart enough to do anything. In reality, he doesn't want to do work. He flirts with priesthood for like 5 minutes because he likes the idea of Rome and art and fancy robes, not because he's spiritually called. He doesn't know how to come out to his parents. He's stuck between his mother's Catholic guilt and his own sexuality. And he's starting to really lie, just more and more to cover everything. As senior year approaches, his grades slip. He's not getting into top schools with scholarships. He does get a strong recommendation for bishops, but the college requires money. And Pete is running out of fake miracles. I mean, when college comes up, Andrew gets vague and he deflects into like sex, shock shit. Like, he's like, hey, my 2 favorite things are sex and defecation. I'm prompted, but hey, sure. Like, he wants to be noticed, but he doesn't have the substance to back it up. So he just, provokes people, And he shows up to school one time in a red leather jumpsuit. I'm sure that got a lot of attention. I immediately thought delirious, but I was like, that wasn't a jumpsuit. That was 2 pieces. So a red leather jumpsuit had to be crazy. Now, this is interesting. So he doesn't write a senior quote, but he's voted most likely to be remembered. And under that yearbook photo, he writes, "Après moi le déluge," which means after me, the flood. He's quoting Louis XV, who basically said that after I'm gone, let everything go. Like everybody could die. Everybody can drown. Not my problem, right? And Andrew isn't just flexing French here. He's telling you exactly how he wants to be remembered. He wants to be remembered as the disaster that everything else collapses around. Now, I wrote in my yearbook, just a little quick sidebar, a quote from Gia, which was a movie that came out in 1998 starring Angelina Jolie about the model Gia Carangi. She was the supermodel before a supermodel was even a thing. She even modeled for Versace. And the quote was, "Being somebody doesn't make you anybody." Now, that was the shortened version of the quote because I only had so many characters. That was the shortened version of, you don't have to be anybody because I would know. Being somebody doesn't make you anybody anyway. Funny, Gia Carangi and Andrew Cunanan had a lot in common. Gia imploded inward. Andrew exploded outward. But at their roots, they were 2 people shaped and eventually destroyed by the same emotional issues. They were adored for what they performed, not who they were. And both learned to survive by becoming whoever people wanted them to be. Drugs accelerated the pain that already existed. Both lived in times where mental health conversation was basically like, pray about it, ignore it, tough it out, whatever, right? And because neither had a strong, intense sense of self, when the outside love evaporated, their foundation cracked and they crashed. Gia eventually died of AIDS at 26. Great movie, by the way. One of my favorite Angelina Jolie performances. That movie is actually produced by HBO, and I bought it randomly when I was living in LA, back when Virgin was in Hollywood. I bought it on Hollywood and Highland at the Virgin there, and I actually saw it when it aired, but I watched it and I was like, she's so good. She's so good in this role. So I highly recommend you check out the movie Gia. G-I-A, about Gia Carangi. Now, I thought that was interesting. Now, the same month Andrew graduates, Pete gets fired, his dad. Now, again, he's bounced from firm to firm. He's lasting no more than a couple of years anywhere. And on paper, he's a stockbroker. For 9 years, he was working as a stockbroker, but in reality, he's running a discount Ponzi scheme. So basically, Pete promises clients big returns he can't deliver. He moves money around between accounts. He uses client A's money to patch holes with client B. And he's essentially doing low budget Bernie Madoff. You know, when the stocks start to wobble and clients start asking questions, the whole thing collapsed. And that's basically what Bernie Madoff did. Bernie Madoff would, you know, fix the books to make it look like there were just so many profits, your statements, your return of investment statements. And then when it was time for you to cash out, he would have to use somebody else's money to pay you. But then when everybody else started cashing out because the markets weren't doing well, he couldn't afford to pay everybody. So then people started to be like, well, where is my money? Like, I've been investing with you for X amount of years, because his older investors had just, you know, been accumulating quote unquote profits based on the statements that Bernie Madoff was making. But then when it was time to cash out, I was like, no, I want my money now. I want to cash out. Where is my money? Bernie Madoff was like, see what happened was, and he was trying to like stall because he was trying to cook the books. He was also trying to convince people. He had already cooked the books, but he was trying to convince people not to pull out. Like, no, you shouldn't pull out. This is temporary. Like, it's going to work out. And people were like, nah, I want my money. And that's basically what Pete was doing. And Pete was facing charges. and he was facing investigations. And Pete did not stick around to face the music. He flees. He literally dips back to the Philippines and abandons the entire family. Marianne, the kids, the mortgage, the debt, all of it. He leaves them with this small military pension of about $650 a month and a pile of unpaid bills. Now, Andrew watches everything vanish. The cars, the clothes, the house, the fantasy. The man he idolized just disappears and blames everyone but himself. And Pete even insists later that the money was supposed to be for Andrew's education and that Mary Ann, quote, spent it all. It was never enough, by the way. This is where Andrew learns a very valuable lesson. Lie, cheat, steal, disappear, right? Narcissist. Image matters way more than integrity. And Mary Ann's mental illness, plays a factor. She starts to crash further. They eventually lose the house. This perfect immigrant success is exposed. And Andrew realized that his entire identity has been built on a lie. And instead of rejecting it, he doubles down. He visits his father in the Philippines, expecting to find power and prestige. And instead, he finds a broke man play acting success in a much smaller theater. Andrew comes back to the States, and of course, he rewrites the story. Suddenly, the family's super wealthy back home. They own sugar plantations. Pete is a general who flies around a dictator. Andrew can pilot planes. It's all a delusion. He can't. None of that was true. None of it's true. And Andrew eventually makes his way to Berkeley and moves in with Elizabeth Liz Coate. I think it's Coate or Cote, a wealthy friend from his San Diego social orbit. Liz is one of the very few people who knew him both before and during his unraveling. She lets him into her life, partly out of kindness, partly out of boredom, partly because she's known him long enough to see past the performance. But they have a lot of things in common. They get into celebrity culture. They get into fashion. They get into lifestyle magazines. I mean, he's basically her living gay friend, even though she doesn't fully clock the fact that he's gay. She even makes him godfather to her children. But Liz isn't blinded by him. She sees the fake job titles, the financial chaos, the increasingly dark jokes, the obsession with guns, and a Marquis de Sade fixation where I'm not even going to get into that. If you listen to my Toy Box episode and maybe my Black Dahlia episode, I have mentioned Marquis de Sade a few times. Yeah. You need to go to those. Black Dahlia, Toy Box. Check those out. Now, Andrew starts talking like some off with their heads aristocrat and insists that rich, powerful people are above the law. Check out my Leopold and Loeb episode for an interesting story about powerful people and rich people thinking they're above the law. He's also making jokes that make people pretty uncomfortable. One being, and he said this more than once, that if I had AIDS or if someone did that to me, I would go on a 5-state killing spree and take everyone with me. Well, he made this 5-state killing spree joke a lot. Liz's husband, because she's married, didn't like it. I mean, to him, it just didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like something was going on underneath. And, obviously people always feel that in retrospect, but I can see when we learn what's happening with him, why he would think that, he kept making this joke about a 5-state killing spree. Now, in Berkeley, Andrew presents this as his Renaissance era. Like, in reality, he's couch surfing, he's broke, he's lying to everyone who asks what he's doing with his life. He's telling people he's studying, he's working, he's investing, whatever sounds impressive. He doesn't like working out like other pretty gay boys, and he's not as instantly desirable as he wants to be, so he leans harder into the persona. He's a social sponge, which, by the way, like, I'm one of those people, like, I do not get hit on in public. And I will say that it hurts the ego a little bit. Like, not gonna lie. As I get older, especially, men are starting to change a little bit. Like, I kind of understand his insecurity to a certain extent, because it sounds insane, but how you technically validate your appearance is through other people. And as women, especially when it comes to like courtship, especially, when you're outside or you dress nice, you look nice, whatever, there is an expectation that like, I'm gonna get complimented at some point. Like, somebody's gonna be attracted to me. I very rarely get hit on. And that is an ego death that I had to have probably 10 years ago, where I just had to understand and completely acknowledge that some people just don't find me attractive. And I just got to accept that as the reality. I have to move about the world not expecting people to be attracted to me. And those who are will show up. You know what I mean? And, you get compliments online, but, online is filters and a bunch of other shit. It's kind of like people who've never seen you before, or even people who, when you're outside, you're just like, I vibe with who I vibe with. Like, I find myself attractive. If I'm not dating, which is kind of how he thought, like if I'm not the gay boy, and I'm not gonna lie, as a girl who has a lot of gay friends, gay men are strict, because men are strict. Men can look like straight men can look like dog shit, and their standards are incredible. Like, they think they need to have the baddest bitch in the room. But when gay men, especially back then, less now, but I feel like more back then, they are strict about that physical appearance. Like, if they want a man with muscles, if they want a man who's tanned, if they want a man with X, Y, and Z, yeah, that's I'm so happy I'm not a gay man. Like, not because you're gay, more because you're a man. Because that shit sounds like it sucks. Y'all too sexual. You too sexual. I take lesbianism over gay males as far as like me any day. Y'all run a very strict program. That's it. That's all. I'm gonna leave it there. Now, Andrew absorbs whoever he's around. He mimics their traits. He'll say anything to sound interesting. His dad is gay. His dad has a boyfriend. His family is royalty. His family is mafia. His family is Jewish. His family is Israeli intelligence, which I'm like, huh? Pick a lie, any lie, nigga. Like, what are we doing? I mean, people generally know that he's full of it, but they find him entertaining. And that's a dangerous game. Everyone assumes that he's a harmless liar. Never, hey, this could turn violent. I don't think there's such thing as a harmless liar, because lies are not harmless. If somebody finds out the truth, it's going to hurt someone. Generally the person you're lying to, or the person you're lying about, So there is no such thing as a harmless liar. There's no such thing as a white lie. That, to me, lies, and I've talked about lies before. If you've a friend of the pie, you already know how I feel about lying. But except to the IRS and the police, we already know. But but when it comes to just like operating in supposedly loving relationships, fuck are we doing? Somebody somewhere is going to be hurt by you lying. Now, like everyone in the 80s and 90s, right? Andrew's living under the shadow of AIDS, but he's incredibly promiscuous, right? Like, he's new to this. Like, he's vibing. He's having a good time, as he should. But he's secretive about his sex life to the point that some people think that he's asexual. And at the same time, he is everywhere in the scene. He starts frequenting San Francisco gay bars, he starts like treating them like networking events for his next identity. He's the guy who knows everyone, who buys drinks he can't afford. He promises trips he'll never take. He reinvents himself hourly. This is where he sharpens his main weapons: charisma and lying. There's also a widely repeated story about Versace, and that he may have met Andrew in a VIP room in 1990 when Versace was in town designing costumes for the opera Capriccio, which Andrew saw and went to, I guess, an after party like club type of vibe. And Versace, who was known to have security procure men for him, had a line outside of his VIP room. And it is believed that is how Andrew meets Versace. Now, whether that actually happened is like still debated. What matters is that Andrew wanted people to believe that he brushed shoulders with Gianni Versace, and it fit the script he was selling. I mean, he belonged in rare air. Like, oh my God, me and Versace, we were hanging out. You know what I mean? Like, that was the vibe. And by 1991, Liz and her husband moved to San Francisco. And Andrew, he doesn't go with them. He's like, I'm good on Sacramento. Like, I mean, he moves back in with his mother in a small apartment in Rancho Bernardo. And he plays the role of the struggling student. He gets a job at Thrifty Drugstore, which is one of the most stable jobs he ever had. He actually kept that job for 3 years. And the relationship with Marianne at this point is volatile. By 1993, after an argument, Andrew allegedly throws her against a wall and fractured her shoulder blade. She's already fragile. She's already prone to nervous breakdowns and suicide attempts. And he never learns any accountability from any of this or any emotional regulation. You know, he's a spoiled brat, really. And what's crazy is like she never gets mental health treatment either. So now you got two kind of like crazy motherfuckers living in the same house, which is a dangerous game. Now, Andrew also has a partying problem. Like, he parties all night and then he crashes. So Marianne had to kind of like unplug the phone so he wasn't disturbed. She'd cook his meals. She'd make sure he had the food that he wanted, even if she couldn't afford it. Again, just like, don't do that. Like, don't do that. Don't not pay your rent to go out to eat. That's a bad idea. Now he sleeps all day and then he goes out at night as Andrew De Silva. That was his little alias. He's the heir to sugar plantations, parking lots, New York real estate, wherever, whatever he is selling that week. He starts hanging around Hillcrest. He's courting military men and tourists from smaller, more conservative towns, kind of like Chicago, right? Like Midwestern gays tend to, you know, kind of have more conservative values even when they are gay. You know, it's kind of like, I'm just trying to play off my gayness by being hella conservative. We see that in the Republican Party. I don't have to explain that to you at all. But San Diego has a big transient community too, and a military population. And I can speak on the transient community. I don't think, as a person who is from and lives in Chicago, who's also been to New York small in theory, I have never seen as many transient people as I've seen in San Diego. I'm just keeping it a buck. So I get it. This is fertile ground for a predator like Andrew. I mean, lots of people passing through, living double lives, not eager to report anything. A lot of people need cash. A lot of people need drugs. Like, you know what I mean? A lot of very willing to do anything type of motherfuckers laying around. And when I say laying around, I mean literally laying around. And at this point, you know, he's essentially doing escort work. He's staying with older men. He's traveling. He's acting like they're his companion. He's selling drugs on the side, mostly as a mule and a middleman, but wealthy men fly him around for like weekends, and he gets something like $1,500 a day for his time in some cases. He also moves product. We're talking meth, party drugs, whatever P. Diddy does. All the things. Mm-hmm. Because P. Diddy's whole cocktail is a gay man's cocktail. That is for sure. Now, Marianne starts seeing expensive shoes and club matchbooks piling up. She's a devout Catholic, so she's really in denial about this and about his sexuality and lifestyle. But she knows something is off. She just can't confront it. And a lot of the designer clothes he flaunts are probably boosted, aka fell off a truck. If you're from the hood, you know what boosting is. He's so desperate to keep up appearances that he'll show up at a club in a tuxedo just to make a splash. People are like, motherfucker, you way overdressed. Like, what is happening? But at the clubs, he starts telling people he's Jewish and that his father is Mossad, or Israeli intelligence, which is not how spies work. I just want to put that on the record. Like, you don't typically walk into like bars and restaurants and clubs and be like, hey, just to let you know, I'm fucking Mossad. That's just not how it works, right? But Andrew knows Jewish success stories carry a certain amount of prestige in America. We don't want to admit it, but it's true. And he wants that shine. He also continues to claim that he's in a PhD program at UCSD, even though he dropped out of college at around 1992. So who gonna check? I think that was just his overall feeling about it. Like, who gonna check? Who gonna check me, ho? I keep doing memes, which is fucking, I'm on the internet way too much. Now, he eventually tries to craft a fake straight life at one point. He's like waving around pictures of his friends Liz and her daughter and like calling them his wife and child. And he's claiming that, there was a restraining order. None of that was true. It's just another layer of his bullshit. Around 1992 to 1993, Andrew meets Jeffrey Trail. He's a Navy officer stationed in San Diego, and Jeff is conservative, but he's out. He eventually gets out the closet to his trusted circle, which is rare in the military environment, especially in the 90s. He's steady, he's grounded, and he's kind. Okay. Their friendship builds fast. Jeff likes Andrew's humor and his energy at first. Andrew admires Jeff's discipline, his masculinity, his confidence. Jeff is needy in his own way, but Andrew likes being the guy who can show him a good time, buy his drinks, pick up his checks. But the cracks appear again, and Jeff sees the lies, the manipulation, the money problems. He's not comfortable either with the drug use. He was so anti-drugs, and friends would warn him over and over and over again. Something is off about, Andrew. And people would tell Jeff point blank, like, Andrew's dealing. He's always carrying drugs. Like, it's obvious. And Jeff would do what we've all done. Well, if you knew him, I ain't gonna lie, should be happening in people's houses. You do know parts of people that other people don't know. But I will say, as I get older, I'm starting to really value and appreciate the wisdom of the crowd, because people outside have the ability to see shit that you just cannot fucking see. Doesn't matter how much you know. It's true. It's just true. Especially women. Now, eventually, Jeff can't ignore what's in front of him. He starts pulling back, right? Like around this time, 1993-ish, Andrew's meth use ramps up. He becomes a full-on tweaker. We're talking wired, tense, up for days, jittery, paranoid, obsessive. Meth is cheap. So it's everywhere, and it's baked into 90s club scene along with Special K, MDMA, GHB. People party from Friday to Monday, and then they crash into what's known as Terrible Tuesdays, the emotional and physical wipeout when the serotonin drops out of your skull. Like, it's just like the serotonin's fucking gone. Like, I'm not high anymore. I'm not having fun anymore. My life sucks. Andrew is already dramatic when he's sober. On meth, he's supercharged. He stays up for days, spinning stories, inserting himself into like other people's drama and shit. It doesn't even involve him, talking like he's staring into, an invisible movie, like he's starring, in an invisible movie. Then he crashes. He crashes so hard that you can practically hear the serotonin. And one weekend bender, and suddenly he's convinced everybody's plotting against him. That's it. He continues flying around the country as a drug mule and an escort. Wealthy men fly him out. He brings product, company, or both. By 1994, Andrew attaches himself to a man by the name of Norman Blackford. He's a retired, extremely wealthy businessman living in La Jolla. And Norman is older, he's established and generous. And Norman becomes Andrew's long-term benefactor. He's older lover, he's financial safety net. He pays for rent. He pays for the trips, the clothes, the dinners, the clubbing, all of the rich boy accessories. And Andrew needs to keep his persona alive. So Norman treats him like a companion, almost like a project, not a co-equal partner. Andrew loves what Norman represents. Money, access, status, security. Norman is basically his ATM. And Norman finally, at some point, he gets tired. He's tired of drama, the lies, the drugs, the volatility. And from 1995 into 1996, he starts pulling back. Less money, less time, less patience. By 1996, the financial lifeline is basically cut. Andrew doesn't see this as a natural end to a dysfunctional arrangement. He sees it as betrayal. And that ego wound never closes. Without Norman's support, Andrew goes from rich boy cosplay to flat out broke. He burns through whatever money he has left. He maxes his cards out. He sells off belongings and leans harder into drugs and delusion because, wow, I can't keep this up. His charm becomes manic. His stories get more theatrical. His mood swings between I'm about to be rich and everyone is out to get me. That's a problem. By the mid 1990s, he's running on just meth, coke, whatever else anybody hands him. He's bouncing between La Jolla, Berkeley, San Francisco. By 1995, Andrew meets this man named David Matson in San Francisco through mutual friends. And one of those, we all ended up at the same bar type of situations. And David's an architect. He's quiet. He's kind. He's successful. He's pretty grounded. He's Midwestern. So his energy is that. And Andrew obviously is not. They spend time together. Andrew wants to be more than situationship. But David keeps the boundaries. They are never a couple in any real official sense. David is polite, but Andrew reads that as intimacy. And that is where politeness becomes a problem. That's when you start to see videos, things circulate on social media that women need to be less kind, which also puts us in a dangerous situation. So I'm not saying that here, but that's where that kind of comes from. A lot of people do not register politeness as politeness. They register it as not only intimacy, but interest. If you say something to me on a bus stop, I don't take the bus, but let's say I did. You say something to me on the bus stop and I'm like, sitting there listening to my headphones and I take my headphones off and I say, oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say? And he says, oh, I think you're really attractive and blah, blah, blah. What's your name? And then I'm politely answering those questions, politely saying thank you. I'm talking to him a little too long now, depending on the personality, because, reasonable, sane men can read that you're just being polite, but it's other ones that read it as, oh, you interested. And then that's when you get to the, oh, can I have your number? X, Y, and Z. I give you my number, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm good. Now all of a sudden the tone has shifted. Because I was being nice to you before. I should have just ignored you the first time. But since I held the conversation for too long, now you're confused. Now you think I just opened the door. It's a slippery slope. Because once you get to the number part and that person is like, what, and you're like, no, I'm good. And they're like, well, then fuck you, bitch. That's where you're like, okay, we dealing with something else here. I can't tell you how often that happens. I mean, that used to happen to me a lot in college. Not the fuck you, bitch, but, you know, the shift in the vibe, because they're having to process that rejection too. And in your head, you never want to feel like you are the one being rejected. And so Andrew, because he's a narcissist, is registering the politeness as intimacy. And this props up his ego. Andrew starts telling these people that they have this deep S&M relationship. It's intense, it's dangerous, it's special. None of this is real. David is not into S&M. He's not living a secret leather lifestyle. There was a interesting part in the book where Andrew, you know, will want to bottom people, and they're like, but I'm not a bottom. You know what I mean? Like the entire S&M angle is Andrew. Andrew uses that story to feel powerful in a relationship where he's actually not powerful. It lets him pretend he has emotional and sexual control over someone who is in reality trying to keep him at arm's length. In 1996, David takes a real job at an architecture firm in Minneapolis, and he moves, which is normal. It's healthy. It's what adults do. And Andrew treats that like betrayal. In his head, David moving is not about career. It's about abandonment. He rewrites it as, he still wants me. This is unfinished. He can't quit me. But by this point, Norman is pulling away. The money is gone. Norman is pulling away, meaning he's about to be flatline broke. Norman is pulling away. The money is gone. The lies are catching up to him. The drugs are messy. And Andrew is spiraling. So you playing with David because David is your speed, but you still taking money from Norman. And Norman is like, nah, give me my shit back. And by early 1997, Andrew is broke, unstable, heavily using meth, burned all his friends. He was cut off by Norman. He's obsessed with David, and he resents Jeff. He's staying up for days. He's acting manic. He's telling increasingly wild stories. He's insisting everyone is against him. He's dabbling into hardcore drugs. He's flirting with steroids. He's deep in this violent pornography and rough sex thing, which was a very interesting part of this book where they talked about how he was very much so into violent porn. And he's out of money. He's out of backup plans. He's out of people who still buy the act. The only thing he hasn't tried is offing himself. So he tells people he's going on a business trip. He heads to Minneapolis. Spring 1997, Andrew shows up in Minneapolis unannounced. Needy, volatile, dramatic. He expects David and Jeff to change their whole existence like it was the old times, but that's not what's happening. The relationship is different now. Jeff wants distance. David is polite, but he's uncomfortable. And just to clarify, Jeff and David also met each other in San Diego, you know, in the gay community, because Jeff and David both knew Andrew. They naturally crossed paths and developed a mutual trust through that shared connection. And they liked each other. They respected each other. And neither of them fully understood how dangerous Andrew was. Andrew is nothing like the glamorous and controlled personality that he's been selling. And from here, the violence begins. And once it starts, it does not stop. From April 24th through the 26th, 1997, before everything happens, Andrew has a going away dinner at California Cuisine in Hillcrest with friends. For once, he doesn't pick up the tab. His credit cards are maxed, and he's had to beg for a credit extension just to buy his ticket to Minneapolis. People who went to that dinner said that it felt final. It felt like he was leaving and they weren't going to see him again. He arrives in Minneapolis on April 25th. He stays at David Matson's loft. They go out to a gay bar. Andrew's trying to act like everything's normal. And at one point, Andrew stays in Jeff Trail's apartment while Jeff is out of town with his boyfriend. And the next day, Jeff tells his boyfriend that he really needs to talk to Andrew about something important, because, you know, they both kind of been struggling with like how to get Andrew off their back and how to treat Andrew. And they were just being nice by allowing him to stay. April 27, 1997, Jeff Trail is kind of the fuse that lights this whole bomb. Jeff, the former Navy officer, had finally gotten sick of Andrew's shit. There had already been an argument at Jeff's apartment in San Diego weeks before, but Andrew stole Jeff's gun. Now that gun is in David's loft. And on the night of April 27th, Andrew is at David's. He calls Jeff and he tells him, "Hey, come pick up your gun." And when Jeff walks into David's apartment, Andrew ambushes him with a hammer. It's a sudden, very quick, brutal attack. Jeff is beaten to death. His watch stops at 9:55 p.m., which investigators assume is the approximate time of death. Andrew and David roll Jeff's body in a rug and push it behind the sofa. Now, Jeff had been struck multiple times in the head with a hammer. The weapon investigators recovered and linked to Andrew. The blows caused severe fractures to his skull, consistent with a close-range rapid assault. The force and pattern of the injuries indicated that he was likely caught off guard and unable to defend himself. There were no signs of torture or slow violence. This was fast, and it was furious, and it was in a rage. Jeff was 28. On April 29th, one of David's coworkers, worried that he hasn't showed up to work, goes to the loft. They find the rug, the blood. Forensics arrive. They unroll it, and inside is Jeff Trail, identified by his wallet and his Navy dog tags. Because it was David's loft, they assumed that who was in that rug was David. And because it wasn't David, it was Jeff, the assumption was that David was a suspect. So cops initially aren't sure what they're looking at. You know, there was a tendency at that time, especially in the 90s, post 80s, where it was just like gay drama. You know, it's like a bunch of gay dudes and law fighting. And then and somebody kills somebody. They thinking it's cut and dry. But for a brief moment, you know, like I said, David is treated as the suspect. Jeff's murder is because of Andrew, his ego, his meth, his rage. This is the moment Andrew had officially crossed the line. This was a point of no return. He was never going to be able to walk this back. On April 28th through May 2nd, for the 2 days following Jeff's murder, Andrew and David were seen together, which also led to the suspicions on David. And they were spotted in the building elevator. They were spotted walking David's dog. They were spotted leaving the apartment. And people who knew David insist that he did not feel free. He is terrified. He's trapped, because they were like, David wouldn't do this. Investigators initially keep him on the suspect board. His family's like, no, he would not do this. He's being held hostage. And on May 2nd, Andrew and David are spotted north of Minneapolis. They're eating lunch in a bar, driving David's red Jeep. Imagine that. Everyone else sees two guys grabbing food, but in reality, one is a killer and the other is a hostage, trying to figure out how he gonna stay alive. May 3rd, 1997, the next morning, David's body is found on the shore of Rush Lake near Rush City, Minnesota. He's been shot with the same .40 caliber Taurus Andrew stole from Jeff. He's shot in the head and the back, which tracks more as like an execution than a mutual struggle. And Andrew kills David because David is the last person who can contradict the delusional love story in his head, and the last witness who really knows what happened in that loft. David was 33. Andrew's spiraling. He's spiraling. Likely he killed Jeff in a rage. He holds David under duress and then kills him during the escape. That's what this feels like, right? And it's an abduction and murder. And by May 4th, Andrew is in Chicago, specifically the Gold Coast. Rich people territory. He winds up at the home of Lee and Marilyn Miglin. If you don't know Marilyn Miglin, she was Chicago royalty, a beauty entrepreneur, HSN queen, philanthropist. She built a multi-million-dollar fragrance and cosmetics empire and was beloved in Chicago society. Her husband, Lee Miglin, 72, was a hugely successful real estate developer. Wealthy, respected, squeaky clean public image, straight-laced, deeply involved in the civic and political life. Not part of the queer scene, not double living in the clubs, not known for leading a secret life. They were married for 37 years. And by every credible account, Lee had nothing to do with Andrew. Marilyn always maintained the murder was random. And former FBI profilers, Greg McCary specifically, and others still say that the overkill makes them wonder if there was more there. But here is what we actually know. There is no confirmed connection between the two. There are people who recall Andrew talking about a sugar daddy in Chicago named Duke, and Lee's son is actually nicknamed Duke. But with Andrew, everything is a performance. He could easily have latched on to that detail after the fact. He's a pathological liar, so we can't really hold the whole case on one nickname. But the escalation in Chicago is wild. Lee goes into a rage, not expecting anything. He's unarmed, he's unprepared, he's just living his life. And Andrew overpowers him, he restrains him, and then he kills him in a frenzy. It feels personal. He's been tied at the wrists. His head was wrapped in tape with just a small gap left under the nose so he could breathe. His body showed the marks of a prolonged, vicious attack with tools from the garage. His ribs were broken. He'd been beaten and stabbed, and his throat had been cut with a gardener's bow saw from the back to the front. Passion. So I understand that people feel like maybe Lee Miglin didn't know him, but if you read the details of this feels different. It really does. But Andrew's dramatic. Andrew then goes inside the Miglin home. He showers, he eats, he changes clothes, he cuts his hair. He's leaving clippings in the sink. He's treating the house like a way station, not like a crime scene. That's what's unsettling. It's the entitlement. He then steals Miglin's 1994 Lexus LS and leaves. The Lexus is equipped with a car phone. Records show calls pinging in Union County, Pennsylvania on May 4th, then in Philadelphia on May 8th, near Pennsgrove, Carneys Point, New Jersey on May 9th. That's how investigators trace Andrew's path. And on May 9th, in Pennsville Township, New Jersey, Andrew knows the Lexus is hot. At this point, the car is basically a mobile wanted poster. He needs a new vehicle. He pulls into Finns Point National Cemetery, where 45-year-old William Bill Reese is working as a cemetery worker, caretaker. Reese does not know Andrew. He has no connection to him, no shared history, nothing. He's just at work. So Andrew shoots him once. Same Taurus pistol, and steals his 1995 Chevrolet pickup truck. That's it. No buildup, no conversation, no nothing. Yeah, it's a useless death. When Reese doesn't come home that night, his wife drives to the cemetery, finds the office door open, and the radio's still playing. She calls the police, who discover the body. Reese's murder is the coldest. It's not fueled by emotion. It's just logistics. He needed a new car. Reese is in the wrong place at the wrong time. So Miglin's Lexus is found abandoned near that area, tying the Chicago and New Jersey scenes together. By May 13th, 1997, less than 3 weeks after the first murder, the Chicago FBI office sends out an immediate nationwide alert. Every major field division gets the blast. We talking Buffalo, Minneapolis, Norfolk, LA, Philly, San Diego, San Francisco, and others. They're basically saying, hey, we need you to wake up because this guy is slipping through the cracks. And Andrew's labeled armed and dangerous. Field officers are told to track down the family, the ex-roommates, the sugar daddies, the club friends, anyone who might have seen him. They list him as Andrew Philip Cunanan from National City, California, August 31st, 1969, 5'9", 5'10", hazel, wears prescription glasses, small burn on the inside right thigh, scar on the outside of right calf. The problem is that Andrew has tons of contacts. He has multiple aliases. He has no fixed job. He has no fixed address. He's a couch surfer. So at this point, he's a chameleon. And the Bureau is always a step behind him. So after killing Reese, Andrew takes the truck south. May 12th, 1997, he checks into the Normandy Plaza Hotel in Miami Beach, paying $29 a night in cash. He lives there under his own name for about 2 months, hiding in plain sight while they hunt for this truck. On June 12th, he officially is added to the FBI 10 Most Wanted list. On July 7th, he pawns a stolen item under his name, fully aware that the pawn shop records are routinely checked by police. I don't think he gives a fuck. By July 14th, he's out of money, and he checks out of the Normandy without paying for his last night. The next morning, July 15th, 1997, around 8:45 a.m., fashion designer Gianni Versace, 50, walks back to his mansion, Casa Casuarina, after a trip to the news cafe to grab coffee and magazines. Andrew's waiting. He walks up the steps. He raises the same Taurus pistol he used on David and Reese, and he shoots Versace once in the back of the head and once in the face. Versace is pronounced dead at Jackson Memorial Hospital at 9:21 a.m. and Versace was shot twice with a .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun. One shot entered the back of his head, fired at close range. The second shot struck his left cheek, exiting near his jaw. There were no signs of struggle, defensive wounds, or physical contact. Meaning Versace never saw it coming and never had a chance to respond. He still had the magazines he just purchased tucked under his arm when he fell. He was alive when emergency responders arrived. Another surprise attack. People quickly find Reese's stolen truck in a garage near the mansion. Inside of it was Andrew's clothes, newspaper clippings about the earlier murders. The killing is super public. Broad daylight. Andrew is broke. He's hungry. He's exhausted. Killing Versace is the last pathetic attempt to force us to remember who the fuck he is. And after Versace's murder, Andrew doesn't vanish. Like, he doesn't vanish as this glamorous outlaw, no shit. He doesn't have rich friends hiding him in the mansions. There's no yacht, no villa, no criminal mastermind. He's not a fucking criminal mastermind. He spends 8 days bouncing around cheap hotels, abandoned buildings. He's starving. He's completely out of options. And law enforcement is saturating Miami. The media is everywhere. The fantasy of being this like big deal under the reality that he's just scared. He's not a big deal. On July 23rd, 1997, a caretaker checks on a houseboat moored off of Miami Beach after hearing a gunshot and suspicious noises. So he calls the police. When officers surround the boat, Andrew knows pretty much it's over. There's no escape route, no money, no new identity. Before they can reach him, he uses the same Taurus pistol one final time and shoots himself in the head. Andrew was 27. No note, no manifesto, no explanation. Now, people love to romanticize his final days like he was some glamorous fugitive. The reality is the opposite. He was hiding around like a stray animal at some point. He was eating whatever he could steal. He was sleeping wherever he could. There was no secret network. There was no hidden bankroll. There was no mysterious lover out there that was keeping them in a basement and no shit. Just a man who was stripped of the fantasy, and he had completely run out of time. And in the end, Andrew dies the way he had been living in those last months. He was clinging on to whatever he can control. And the FBI interviews were pretty consistent with the picture. They talked about how intelligent he was, how he was in gifted programs, how he lived with older men in San Francisco. They talked about Norman. They talked about his mother even called him gourmet because he only liked the finest foods and clothes. Friends tell the FBI that Andrew used aliases like Baron von Goshinsky to impress men. And he had others too. Drew Cunningham, Drew Cummings, Drew Cummins, Lieutenant Commander Andrew DeSalva, U.S. Navy Intelligence Andrew Phillips, Andrew Phillip, Andrew Francis. He constantly lied about his background, claiming mansions, nobility, and wealth that never existed. So even though this book kind of is through the eyes of people that knew him, did they know him? Because Andrew didn't even know himself. He was known in California queer scene as a guy who dated and lived off older, wealthy men. He worked sporadically, a low-wage gig at a thrifty shop. But he presented himself as a businessman, a student, a prince, a son of diplomats. He was a secret agent heir at some point. Whatever fit best. And when Versace was murdered, the media and the public went feral with speculation. It was the 90s. So sensationalism is the business model. Gay men were still treated like plot twists. They didn't know what the fuck to expect from them. And so, of course, the minute a famous gay designer was killed by a gay man, the rumor mill threw itself into overdrive. One big rumor being that Andrew killed Versace because he had AIDS. That wasn't true. One big rumor is what that was. Andrew was negative. But Versace, according to the book, Versace tested positive for HIV. From Vanity Fair, quote, in investigating Versace's health for her book, Vulgar Favors, the basis for the FX series, Orth explained why an HIV diagnosis at the time could have been a threat to the company if it was true. And the diagnosis would not have been a great threat because of any stigma associated with HIV per se, but because before Gianni's murder, the family had considered taking the company public, even signing with Morgan Stanley to manage the initial public offering, announcing that its namesake visionary had a life-threatening illness would deflate the company's value. She noted that even though Versace was in a long-term relationship with Antonio D'Amico, he and Antonio had a nightclub doorman procure sexual partners for them in the early 90s. And after the designer fell seriously ill in 1994 and 95, according to Orth, Gianni's health improved in the last 6 months before his death, at a time when many people with HIV were experiencing similar results with new life-saving medications. And after the murder, she wrote, Versace's family wished to rush the cremation and get the ashes out of the country as soon as possible. And while Versace probably did have HIV, the truth is just like less dramatic and more tragic than that. Andrew chose Versace because he was visible. He represented everything that Andrew wanted to be. But I do understand that there is the possibility that Andrew knew Versace. And I also understand that Versace and Versace's people would not be wanting to associate them or their namesake with a person like Cunanan, who struggled with this identity, who was kind of mentally ill, who was addicted to meth, and who went on a killing spree. I mean, yeah. Now, people said this was another myth that he had a hit list, that he was targeting gay men specifically, that he was acting out of revenge for being HIV positive, and that the murders were ritualistic or that some secret network was helping him hide. None of that seems to hold up. Andrew was HIV negative. He didn't have a grand plan. He wasn't acting on an organized vendetta. He was acting on panic. His ego was collapsing and he was on meth. There was no list. There was no secret lovers that were, I mean, there may have been secret lovers that wronged him, but there were no mafia ties. There were no criminal mastermind. What looked like strategy was most likely desperation. Andrew wasn't playing chess. After the spree, criminal profilers and mental health experts concluded that Andrew likely exhibited a combination of narcissistic personality disorder. Andrew didn't just lie to impress people. He lied to exist. He didn't know where the persona ended and the real person began. He also had antisocial personality disorder. He wasn't emotionless. He just felt intensely, but he couldn't empathize. Paraphilic fixations, identity dysregulation with the violent sexuality, domination fantasies, the S&M situation, not because he practices safely or consensually, but because it fed his fantasy of control. Severe meth induced paranoia, and he was delusional as shit. Psychologists said that Andrew developed drug-induced psychosis. Layered on top of personality disorder, this is a dangerous combination. Mentally ill people should not do drugs. Nobody should, but mentally ill people specifically. They shouldn't even fucking drink. Then there was the childhood trauma and the enmeshment disorder. Pete's fraud, Pete's abandonment, Marianne's instability, this pressure to be the golden child. They put him at a very high standard. You know, the cultural identity issue, her being Italian, him being Filipino. He was emotionally abandoned. And you know me at this point. Sometimes I have to give listeners the permission to hold two truths at once. This is one of those cases. For all the lies, the theatrics, the destruction, there was a version of Andrew who was not a monster. The younger version was bright, sensitive, curious, capable of charm, as long as it wasn't manipulative. And teachers said that he was incredibly intelligent. Friends said that he could be funny. He was magnetic. He was generous. He was deeply affectionate when he wasn't performing. He had a hunger for culture, art, fashion, language, the kind of kid who could have grown into something great if he grew up in a stable environment with boundaries and love. Underneath the persona was a boy raised in a house, delusional parents, instability, and emotional dysfunction, not to mention untreated mental illness. He learned early that reality didn't fucking matter. Only the story mattered. Combine that with abandonment, financial issues, drugs, you get someone who will not ever probably have a stable sense of self. And the tragedy is, if Andrew had gotten help, mental health care, maybe went to rehab, the outcome for every person involved could have been way fucking different, because he wasn't born a killer. He became one through a very short lifetime of very untreated shit that he wasn't equipped to handle on his own. And I feel like you can feel compassion for that without excusing what he did. Andrew Cunanan has been painted as a spree killer because he is. But he was brilliant. He was deeply unstable liar. He was raised in a house full of fantasy and performance. And he decided the only way to avoid being a nobody was to turn himself into a monster, which to him was somebody. Andrew never formed a stable identity, so he built one. And in the words of Harvey Dent, sometimes you got to either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. That's the story of Andrew Cunanan. I'm not good at beating people up like that unless I firmly believe that they are pieces of shit, right? And He just had the wrong parents. I blame his parents for this shit. And to be totally honest, the dad and the mom both seem mentally ill. His siblings seem to have been fine, but, you know, they didn't go on a multi-state killing spree. So I don't know much about them. But yeah. But it goes back to my yearbook quote, right? When I was talking about Gia Karanji. You don't have to be anybody, because somebody doesn't make you anybody anyway. And we get way too fucking obsessed with being somebody nowadays. And I mean like the fame, the wealth, the attention, the validation. We get way too obsessed with that. Who the fuck are you? Because if you don't know who you are, I don't give a fuck about who you present. That's just me keeping it a buck. That's why I only like being around real ass people. So, all right, y'all. I will see you all in 2 weeks. I'll probably have a guest on that episode. I'm going to start working on that episode in a couple of days. But as you know, this is I Swear to Drunk, I'm Not God. And follow me on TikTok. I Swear to Drunk Podcast. The link will be in the show notes. And I know you didn't enjoy the red carpet, because I didn't. It's disgusting. Next time I'll come with a better drink too. But I hope you enjoyed this story. I hope you got something out of it. I'll see you later. Peace.